In part one, I showed you some backgrounds that I was able to make using scraps that were in my scrap bin. Today, I want to show you what you can do with some smaller scraps, but before we start, I just wanted to show you some card examples that I made using backgrounds made from scraps like this. Here's one where I took strips of scraps, you can see the yellow plaid and the floral, to make an adorable outdoor scene for my little beekeeper. Here's another card where I took some larger pieces and added a focal image. Here's one where I took a scrap of the blue paper and cut it out using a wavy border to make an underwater card. Here's an example of how I used pieces that don't quite fill up a card to make a focal panel to put my little mice on. And here's an example of a card where I used scraps to make a wallpaper, a floor, and a baseboard to make a cute inside of a house kind of scene. I hope that gives you some ideas on some ways that you can use those kinds of backgrounds. What I'm going to do for the rest of this video is show you a bunch of different ways that I use smaller scraps in my card making. My first idea is to use patterned paper to decorate the inside of a card. I have a couple examples of showing you how I've done that. And I think that this is a good way to keep paper out of your scrap bin to begin with. And I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. On this card, I used this pretty fall paper, but when I cut it down, I had a little bit of a strip left over that I could throw into my scrap pile and probably have a hard time using, or I could add it to the inside of the card just to give it a little something special and to extend that scene out. I have a couple other cards where I've done this. In this one, when I cut down this striped patterned paper, I took the remnant and put it on the inside as well. With this card, I actually found a piece of patterned paper that was from the same collection and put it on the inside. So it's not the exact same paper, but it's similar. Another way that you can decorate the inside of your card in kind of a more functional way is to add a gift card pocket. There are a lot of dies out there that create gift card pockets. This one happens to be by Lawn Fawn, but what you can do is do what I've done here and make a bunch ahead of time so that you have them ready to go to put in a card if you decide that you want to add a gift card. Or you can add them to a card while you're making it that coordinates with the outside. So here I've made a card with a jungle theme with lots of greens and blues, and on the inside I added a green gift card pocket. And here's another example where I've taken a Christmas card and added a gift card pocket on the inside as well. My next idea for using paper scraps is to make gift tags. Gift tags are quite small, and so they're a great way to use up some of those smaller scraps. Tags come in lots of different shapes and sizes, so you can get really creative with using them, even using those small scraps to make tiny tags. Here are some really simple tags that I've made, but I also made some that are a little more involved using scraps. I was even able to make a little shaker tag using some scraps and a scrap piece of acetate. Tags are great because you can use them on their own on a gift, or you could even add them as a focal point on a card. I think I don't make enough tags, but it's a great way to use up some scraps. Another good way to use up some scraps is to make small or mini-sized cards. You can use scraps to make backgrounds for small cards, kind of similarly to the ones that I made in part one, but you can also use some of those larger ones to make little cards, like these ones that I've made. And I think these are great to give away as a gift set. They're perfect for thank you cards, and it's just kind of a fun card size to work with and a great way to use up those scraps. You can use scraps of any size for this next idea, and I'm going to show you a couple different variations. So here is a background that I made by using a punch to punch out different shades of paper to make these hearts. I even have some left over, and I just glued them on to an A2 sized panel. I think I cut it down after that as well. And here's an example of a card that I made using this technique. These hearts are much smaller, and I've run them through an embossing folder, but it just makes a really cute background. Almost looks like you made your own patterned paper. So that's one way that you can make a background. You can also make a patchwork style background. So I used a little square die, and I found a bunch of papers that I thought looked good together, and I made a panel of squares. If you run this through your embossing machine or with an embossing folder, it will kind of look like a quilt, which I think is super cute. And here's an example of a card that I used this kind of technique on, making a patchwork kind of style. You don't just have to make backgrounds using this technique. I made a little rainbow circle panel thing using different strips of paper that I picked out. I'm not sure how I'm going to use it yet, but I can see this being a focal point on a more clean and simple card. One of my favorite ways to use pattern paper scraps is actually to make decorative elements for my cards. I recommend that you go through your dies and see what you can form together. For this batch of scraps, I decided to go with some pumpkins because I had a lot of fall colors, these adorable lemons because I had a lot of yellow paper, and a lot of hibiscus flowers because I had so much of this watercolor wishes paper in my scrap bin. And you can get really creative with it. I added some ink blending here to the lemons just to give them a little more definition. But another thing that I really love about this technique is that you can use up your larger scraps this way, or even your smaller scraps. Even this teeny tiny piece I was able to use to make the tops of the pumpkins. And my last idea that I have for you today is what to do with those really teeny tiny scraps. And first, you can use them to make your own embellishments. I took a heart die that I had in my stash, and I cut it out of this metallic cardstock, and now I have my own little heart embellishments that I can use similarly to how I would use rhinestones or sequins on a card. So that's a good way to use up, especially those glitter and metallic scraps. You can also use up those little pieces to put behind an aperture. So what I did with this panel is I took my snowflake dies and I cut them out of the white panel. And on the back, you can see the small scraps that I used to back those snowflakes so that they appeared to be different colors. Then I added the white snowflakes that I cut out just around it, and I think this will be really pretty for a winter card. And lastly, you can use those itty bitty pieces to add details to different die cut cards. So I used really small pieces to cut out the mittens, these little details, the earmuffs, and even the scarf. So don't throw away those little pieces because you can use them for something like this. After all is said and done, I've definitely made a huge dent in my scrap pile. This is all that's left that I have of my pattern paper scraps. I decided that for my specialty papers that I would try and keep them separated in little sleeves so that it's a little bit easier for me to find these things. So I've done that with my foiled cardstock, acetate and vellum, glitter cardstock, and textured cardstock. But overall now, my scrap pile is much less overwhelming, and now I have a bunch of new elements that I can use to make different cards. I hope you were able to get some ideas on how to use your scraps from this video, and I hope that if you have a bunch of scraps that you'll give it a try. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!